The Packers need some help on the edge. So where can they get it in this draft? Plus, what if the receiver board breaks wonky for them and we do a live mock draft?
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter at Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen of the day every day. And today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. Everything you need in 2022 for all of your gambling needs. BetOnline, where the game starts. Where are we going to start? Today we start on the edge, where I got through the top 100-ish pass rushing prospects over the weekend, plowed through them, watched the tape, broke them down, and tried to figure out where these guys fit. Where do they make sense? And the interesting conclusion that I came to, perhaps interesting only to me, is I think there are only two guys who, for me, would be lock, definite, no doubt first-round players. Two, Aiden Hutchinson and Kayvon Thibodeaux. Those are the only two. I know Trayvon Walker is going to go in the top 5 in all likelihood, and Jermaine Johnson, the second, is probably going to go in the top 12. George Karlaftis could go in the top 20. There are all of these players potentially projected to go in the first round. I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't think it makes sense. Now, if you're the Packers, they probably have one of 3 or 4 players in mind. It's probably one of the 4 that I mentioned at the top. Hutchinson's not falling. Thibodeaux probably not falling. Walker probably not falling. Karlaftis is the name to keep an eye on. He's young. He can be a 21-year-old rookie. He tested well. And I think that you can see the upside there. He needs to get his body in a little bit better shape. I think he needs to get stronger in his upper body. And he needs to add a lot of polish to his game. But you understand the physical tools with him. If you're the Packers and you feel like you can get a receiver a little bit later, maybe he's the guy that you feel comfortable moving up for. I think if we think about this idea of Green Bay moving up for an edge, as was proposed to me, I think that you understand, okay, then there is this drop-off. And I see the drop-off. And I think it's pretty precipitous after the top guys. Even if you think that top tier is 4 instead of 2, then there's clearly a drop-off to this next tier of guys. And so at 53, there are some potential players to be excited about there. Drake Jackson, Nick Benito are the names that I have sort of soft circled there. I think you can find some pass rush value on day 2. And the reason that I like that, I wrote about this for The Leap last week. When you look at the positions in the draft, historically speaking, if you want a pass rusher, you want him in the first round. There's still pretty good track record of bucketing these guys correctly in the second. You can still find very good players in the second round. And the Packers, they don't need to take that super home run swing because they've made it and they hit on it with Rashawn Gary. Rashawn Gary could be a Defensive Player of the Year candidate sooner than later. And you have Preston Smith, who you just signed to a long-term extension. Now, it isn't a long-term extension that could easily be a 1 or a 2-year deal, but he's probably going to be here for at least 2 more years in all likelihood. So you need a nice third pass rusher. Now, this dovetails with our discussion last week about, do you want to chase ceiling or floor? I think it's not about that so much as understanding with the needs on this team and where they need to be prioritized. You have a third pass rusher or receiver, safety, interior offensive line, which you can get later in the draft. I'm ordering the pressing nature of the needs, receiver, safety, edge. Incorporating value of position, incorporating current roster construction, that's how I would order them, which means it's okay to wait. I think it's okay to wait on a potential pass rusher. Now, do you want to wait too long? No, probably not. But that's the beauty of having 2 picks in the second round is you get to have multiple potential bites at the apple. So when you have 2 second-round picks, 2 top 60 picks, that makes it a lot easier to look at these guys and say, okay, well, I don't have to press at 28. I don't have to press even at 53, understanding that there are these guys that could be available later. Now, there are also some guys that I think are going to go in the first round that I don't think are first-round players. Guys like Arnold Ebiketie, I don't think that's a first-round player. And so but like I said, I don't like really any of these edge guys outside of the top guys in terms of where they're slotting in. Now, I think you could talk yourself into someone like David Ojabo. If he falls, could he fall to 53? Yeah. Now, this brings up an interesting question. We talked about this in the Free Leap newsletter today. How are you going to value someone who is not going to play for you this year? And I think the Packers need to value them lower than maybe other teams just because most rookies are bad. But there's a difference between throwing away a rookie season because a guy is not very good and is only playing 30, 40% of the snaps and someone who literally cannot get on the field. Injuries can set back development in meaningful ways. And that's just a week of training camp, 2 weeks of training camp, an exhibition game. Now think an entire season. Think about how Jordan Love would have benefited from more reps his first year as a rookie, not just getting out on the field, practice reps. Just practice reps. And then those game reps are even more valuable. To lose that, you're basically starting over in 2023 with a guy who now is going to be bad. And you're trying to work into the role that he could have had as a rookie. So again, I look at these players and I'm looking at just my list here. Aiden Hutchinson at the top, Kayvon Thibodeau, Trevon Walker at 30, but he's not gonna get there. I have Karlaftis like low 40s with the Jobo, and Jermaine Johnson is late 40s. DeMarvin Leal at 50. Now we're talking about guys that could be borderline first round players. Arnold Ebiketie, Jermaine Johnson, that I don't think are locks for me to be first round prospects. And in fact, none of those guys are. So when you look at the shape of the draft, I think that gives us a clear understanding of where the value is, at least in my eyes. Now, are the Packers going to feel the same way? I don't know. But if we believe this idea that the Packers' ideal, and this was, proposed to me by someone purporting to know, that there is this scenario where the Packers would like to move up for a pass rusher. Well, that suggests that the guys that they think are going to be there at 22 or 28 are not going to be quality guys. That's why you move up. You move up for Darnell Savage because you don't think the guy that you want is going to be there. You move up for Jair Alexander because he's not going to fall to the end of the first round. You move up for Jordan Love because, well, I don't know why you move up for Jordan Love, but you understand the point here. That would be why you would do something like that. I have Landon on. I think the value for Green Bay at edge, also relative to the other concerns on this team, lead me to believe that the best course of action for the Packers for targeting pass rushers is on day 2. Now, the exception here is my guy, Travis Jones, who I think is the best interior defender in this class, ahead of Jordan Davis. Yes, I said it, ahead of Jordan Davis. I think he can offer you enough pass rush upside that maybe you worry a little bit less about that edge guy because you're getting some more interior juice. I think he can be the best pass rushing nose tackle in the league, not named Kenny Clark. And if you're going to let Kenny Clark play a little bit more 3-tech, then all of a sudden, now you've got two guys on the interior who can not only eat blocks, but push the pocket and create havoc on the interior. That's really useful. Now, there are very few of those guys. I think just this one. Jordan Davis not going to make it to 22 or 28 in all likelihood either. And Jordan Davis has some pass rush upside to be sure. So unless you can get one of those guys or the guys that I mentioned, if Kayvon Thibodeau falls to 22, yeah, take that guy. 100% take that guy. But let's be honest, he's probably not going to be there. So the Packers have to plan accordingly. We are going to talk about the receiver board falling wonky because we're doing a Locked On mock draft exercise. And in that exercise, guess what? The receiver board broke wonky. So I was in a bad position. I want to talk more about it when we get there. Today's episode brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for all of your betting stats and sports info. Find all the latest developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs, the start of Major League Baseball. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sports wagering information, live betting, playoffs, esports, all kinds of great stuff. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. So, what happens if in 2022 the receiver board breaks like it did in 2020? Where Packer fans and Packers media and people like me who study this stuff are going, okay, Brandon Ayuk goes at 25 right before the Packers are about to pick. And you go, okay, well, I still really like Michael Pittman and I still really like T. Higgins, but I know the Packers probably aren't going to. But just take Michael Pittman. Michael Pittman has turned into a very good player in Indianapolis and would be easily the best. I don't want to say easily. He would be the best receiver on this team right now. Skill sets are a little redundant with Allen Lazard. They're both big body guys. I think Allen Lazard, again, could be closer to what we've seen from Michael Pittman if he were given the opportunity, if he were given number one receiver targets. That's probably not going to happen. You probably don't want that to happen. He's just not that guy, and that's okay. Not everyone is that guy. So we could be in that position again where we're watching this going, okay, there are a couple receivers on the board, but they're probably not the guys that Green Bay is gonna love, and or they're not gonna pick. They're just not as interested in picking. So when we did I don't want to give away too much, and I'm not going to tell you eventually who I picked because that would sort of defeat the purpose. But we did a Locked On mock draft. And all this content is going to come out the week of the draft. A lot of good stuff. Keep an eye out for it. Garrett Wilson gone. Drake London gone. Chris Olave gone. Treylon Burks gone. Jameson Williams gone. All guys I would have happily picked at 22. And when you don't have that opportunity, now you're going, okay, what's the deal? And remember, I don't like the edge class. So I'm not thrilled with taking George Karlaftis there. I don't like the value there. Now Green Bay might. And I would understand that pick if they made it. Now, I happen to think that Travis Jones at 22 is not too rich. And so maybe you just make that pick and you go ahead with whatever is available at 28. I made a trade. I traded down. Again, I don't want to get too much into it because I want to spoil it. But what makes the position that they're in so advantageous is even if those five guys, the big five, are gone, Jahan Dotson, who I don't love, George Pickens, Christian Watson, they can't all go. They can't all go. Sky Moore, Alec Pierce, they can't all go. Now, I know we said this in 2020, and it turned out they couldn't all go, but the Packers didn't like what was available when they picked. at least for them. There were actually 2 players, apparently, according to reporting, that they did like. They just didn't like them as much as Jordan Love. Third rail issue, I understand. The difference this year is 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks. So if you think Travis Jones is the best player at 22 and that you're going to get one of those players later, like if you leave the first round with Travis Jones and George Pickens, that is a home run first round to me. A home run. Even if George Pickens is not ready to be your alpha 1 in 2022, by the way, he might be, but he certainly has a chance to do that by 2023 and 2024. If you can get one of those guys who has that alpha number 1 upside, you have done your job with this draft. And there's still going to be these good players in the second round. The Jalen Tolberts and the Alec Pierces and the Khalil Shakirs, like they are going to be available. The Packers have so many picks that even if the board breaks weird for them at the top, they're still going to have so many options when it comes to what they do at 28, what they do at 53. I mean, think about this. The Seahawks have 40 and 41. Let's just say, for instance, they take a receiver at 9. Then, okay, they have this nice 40 and 41, 20 for 40 and 41, maybe in some stuff. And now you have 22 that goes out. You're going to still have 28. And now you're going to have 4 picks between 40 and 60. 4 picks, including 2 back-to-back, 40 and 41, where you're probably going to get guys that you had either first-round grades or borderline first-round grades on. That's a really good outcome for Green Bay, who needs some cheap talent on a team that is already in some salary cap issues. That's a great position to be in because you have that extra first in your back pocket. And if you need to reach a little bit, fine. But hey, look, 28, not that far from 40. Only so many guys can be picked. So I happen to think more receivers or more quarterbacks are going to go off the board than went off the board in this Locked On mock. I think you're going to see 3 in the first round at least. I think Pickett, Willis, Ritter are going to go in the first, and I think Matt Corral has a chance to sneak into the first. Push the guys down. I think you're going to see 4 edge guys go before Green Bay picks at 22, at least 3, but probably at least, but I think minimum 4, honestly. I think Hutch, Thibodeau, Walker, and Triple J are all going well before Green Bay picks, like in the top 15. And then you're looking at that Karlaftis tier could be there at 22. Who are the guys then that you get excited about at 22 if it's not a receiver? Look, again, Travis Jones is worth it. Do you like the safeties enough? Daxton Hill, Lewis Seen. I really like those guys. They're really good. If you leave the first round with Daxton Hill and George Pickens, that's a great first round. That's a great first round. So the options, the optionality that Green Bay has because of all of these picks puts them in the advantageous position so that if this goes off the rails a little bit, they have so much maneuverability to be able to, if they want to, move up. I mean, Jake Morley, our buddy, proposed, what about moving up for Garrett Wilson? I don't think they're going to do that, but what about moving up? What about moving up? I wouldn't, but what about if let's say Drake London, who's going to test here in a couple days. He goes out and he runs 4.5 flat and he jumps 40 inches and broads 11 and has a 6.9 3-cone. He might go in the top 10 if he does that, and let's say he falls to 15. You have so many picks to trade up for someone that you like. Maybe between now and then, the asking price for DK Metcalf comes down. Maybe between now and then, the 49ers get really, really drunk and are just like, you know what, Debo, not interested. The Packers have the ammunition for that. They have the look. I understand the cynicism from fans. They're going to take a defensive tackle and a guard in the first round. And they might. I don't think they will, but they might. Even then, they have 3 picks on day 2. 2 in the top 60 and 1 more at 92 to add useful players, to add really good players. And I know now that the opposite of this is now true, where it's become trendy to say, oh, I actually would really like it if they picked a defensive tackle and a linebacker, just bolster this defense. No. You don't have to be a hipster about it either. That's silliness. If you pick good players, like picking good players is always the right thing to do. If you pick good players and you make your team better, that's always good. That doesn't make a good process. If the Packers take a linebacker and a defensive tackle, even if it's Travis Jones, that's not good process. And I love Travis Jones. Like if they take Nakobe Dean and Travis Jones, that will not be good process. Now, they're not going to take Dean. They're not going to take a linebacker. But if they, look, if they took Daxton Hill and Travis Jones, you have a potential future starter at safety, a guy who's going to come in right away and play snaps for you. You've got Jones, who is a potential stud interior defensive player. And I don't use that, sparingly. It's pretty good. And you leave day 2 with Alec Pierce and Jalen Tolbert. Like, yeah, cool. Did you get an alpha number 1? No. But you made your team better. And you still have options. Julio Jones is still out there. Will Fuller is still out there. The trade market is still available to you. Tyler Lockett could be available in June. That's what makes the position the Packers are in so advantageous. I know I've used that word a lot, but it's also, I think, one of the reasons why you look at the betting odds. The Packers over-under on BetOnline is still 11. 10.5, depending on what day you look at it. The Packers are still the obvious favorites in the NFC North. They're still among the favorites in the NFC, even with this enormous hole at receiver. And one of the reasons for that is they have so many ways that they can address it that I think the people who know things in the desert, it's not that they know things in this case. They just know Green Bay has flexibility. They know the kind of options, and they assume something is going to happen. Something is going to occur that the Packers are going to make occur that improves the team such that they now are this viable team in the NFC. And I think, as I've said over and over, they are a potential Super Bowl contender if things break right, if they stay healthy right now, with Allen Lazard as their number 1 receiver. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. So now we just get to have some fun, which is what we try to do around here every day. All right, we're going to do a live mock draft coming up after this. Today's episode is brought to you by Built Bar. Built Bar is the best tasting protein bar ever. It's the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. And this weekend, I enjoyed very much the Masters, but I had a really bad thing happen to me. I ran out of Built Bars. It was a sad day when I opened my cabinet and realized, oh my gosh, I don't have anything. I don't have this thing that I rely on so often for sustenance that also tastes so delicious. That is what separates Built Bar. Not only is it good for you, high in protein, high in fiber, low in net carbs, low in calories, tastes delicious. Covered in 100% chocolate. The flavors are out of control. The Built Puffs, cinnamon churro, coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie. We're talking protein infused marshmallows and the basic flavors. Awesome. Mint brownie, white chocolate cookies and cream. Are you serious? And they taste. They taste so good. Try it for yourself. Go to Built.com and use the promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. And thanks for making Locked On Packers your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Locked On NFL Draft. Ryan Tracy and former NFL cornerback Eric Crocker bring the NFL Draft to life every day with insight and analysis on college football prospects and NFL front offices. It's free and available on all platforms. So, here we are. We are going to do a mock draft using the Pro Football Focus simulator. People complain that I only use the Draft Network. I like to go back and forth because I think it helps us get a feel for some of the different kinds of players people think are going to be available. Okay, so here we are. This situation, this very situation that we discussed. Drake London off the board. Garrett Wilson off the board. Chris Olave off the board. Jamison Williams off the board. Treylon Burks off the board. He goes off right in front of Green Bay. So best available for the Packers right now. Bernard Raymond, who not interested in. He's an old. I think the Packers might be, but I don't think they're going to take a tackle. Devontae Wyatt, that's a no. Nakobe Dean, that's a no. Tyler Linderbaum, that's a no. Sam Howell, that's a no. David Ojabo, no thank you. Andrew Booth Jr., corner. Then you're talking about Lewis Cine, Daxton Hill, Travis Jones. This is getting tough. No receivers here. So here's what we're going to do. It's time to be seen, to see and be seen. Now, this is going to illustrate my point. Seen at 22, the interim players that were picked. Dean went, Wyatt went, Khair Alam, the cornerback from Florida, Andrew Booth, the corner from Clemson, and Linderbaum. You know who's still on the board? A lot of receivers. Jahan Dotson. If you liked him, I don't. But if you liked him. George Pickens, still on the board. Jalen Tolbert, still on the board. Christian Watson, still on the board. Justin Ross, still on the board. I'm taking George Pickens. And I'm so happy about it. Leaving the first round with Lewis Cine and George Pickens, great. That's great. Now, PFF has him 57th. Don't care. I don't. I have him 29th. So I'm getting good value. I have him as a late first round player. If I'm getting that guy at 28, I feel really good about it. And my board's not done. He could move up the board. I've got a lot of open space on this board that I can move some guys up. Now I've got 2 Georgia Bulldogs on my team, and I'm feeling really good. Now I can just sort of let it all come to me. And bang, see? Nick Bonito here at 53. I love it. I love it. Thank you. I will take Nick Bonito very much. Thank you. I think the Packers are going to be interested in some smaller pass rushers. They were able to do it in LA. They were able to do it with the Chargers. I think that they can make this work. Now, for the Packers on the board, Brian Asamoah, linebacker from Oklahoma, Kingsley Enagbare from South Carolina, Abraham Lucas from Washington State, a couple other linebackers. I wonder how the Packers will value linebacker. I don't see them, really valuing it here. So that makes some of these options interesting. I could go with another receiver like Alec Pierce. See, I have a lot of options. We just talked about this. I have a lot of options. And so I think if we're looking for guys that fit the mold, I think Jalen Tolbert is an underrated guy in this draft. And I know that, I think that I can get someone at 92 that's going to give me some speed. And that's what makes this interesting. That's what makes this fun. So the thing is I don't necessarily want to go receiver here, but I don't know that there's a lot of options for me other than that I really like, given the position that the Packers are in and given the players that have already been picked and have already come off the board. So I'm going to take I'm going to take Jalen Tolbert and feel very good about it. I think he's a really good football player, and I think he can be. This goes back to our point about congruency. I think he can be a 2. I don't know about a true 1, but I think he can be a 2. And if you think George Pickens can be a true 1, and I do, you've got your 1 in Pickens, you've got your 2 in Tolbert, you've got your slot in Amari Rodgers. That's the future of this football team. You want to pay Allen Lazard? Great. You have more options. I think that all works for you. So now I've got the foundation. I've got the foundation for my offense. All right, 92. Do I want to take an offensive lineman? I probably do. There are a couple guys here. You know, there's some tackles. Kellen Deach from Arizona State. Zach Tom from Wake Forest. Those are guys who are big. I think they fit athletically what you're looking for if you're the Packers. I think that makes the most sense to try and get. I wanted to try and get. We could go with Ruckert, the tight end from Ohio State. I think that would make some sense in this spot. Cade Otton from Washington, I think could make some sense in this spot. So I'm going to go, let's see. I think that there is a case to be made that what you want is some always you want to take offensive linemen when you can. So let's do that. Let's take Deitch. And that's my draft. I like it. Pro Football Focus probably not going to love it, but I like it. And okay, so Cine, Pickens, Benito, Tolbert, Deitch. Safety, receiver, edge, receiver, tackle. And he can play guard if you want, probably. So, feel really good about how that played out for the Packers in this scenario. And again, this speaks to the flexibility that this team has. A lot of picks, a lot of options, and I'm getting really excited for what we're going to see. I'm really, really excited to see Brian Gutekunst have all these selections and to see how Packer fans inevitably get mad about the players that were and were not selected. You can follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. We're going to have a lot more this week on Locked on Packers. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at Locked on Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked on Packers. And anytime you want to hit us up on the Locked on Packers fan hotline, you can do that, 920-341-3775 to stay Locked on Packers.